All right, so we're gonna start with our Dust to Onyx deck, or my Dust to Onyx deck, but we'll be giving messages for all of us. If you chose this deck, let's see what messages it has for you. Now this deck this deck is the second one that I got in my tarot reading. And I loved it, but so far it's by Courtney Alexander. They're a wonderful multidisciplinary artist, and I've usually loved their work. So I think once you see the imagery, I think some may be able to see why I love their work so much. So here we go. What do we need to know? What do we need to meditate upon? What do we need to understand? What do we need to release? What do we need to integrate? What do we need to focus on? What do we need to recede from? What do we need to know? What do we need to reflect upon? What do we need to review and reconsider? What do we need to know? All right, so 3 of Gourds, so if you can see the work there, it's the 3 of Gourds, you can read that as well. That's the underlying card. You know what, we've gotten Gourds a lot, also traditionally known as the 3 of Cups, and I think that's very fascinating. So with the 3 of Cups, or 3 of Gourds, there is, as I said in the previous pools, 3 is the number of creativity, it's of expansion, and Gourds are about relationships. So the underlying theme being, how are we creating these new ways of connection, and connection, like I said, with our bodies, with each other, with other bodies, in our emotions. That is interesting. So let's see what the heart says. Okay. So we have the Wheel of Fortune reversed. Interesting. And that's at the heart of the reading. And then we have the Sun as the challenge. Isn't that gorgeous? Such beautiful work. And those are 2 major arcana cards. So with these 2 cards, okay, so the Wheel of Fortune is one of my favorite cards out of the major arcana, because it's a very simple message, but it's sometimes one of the most challenging messages, where the Wheel of Fortune is going to spin regardless of what we want, right? The wheel is constantly turning. That's such as life. The wheel turns, it goes on, life goes on. Life goes on. And I think it makes me think of, I think there was like this meme I've seen on Twitter because I still call it Twitter. Um, and I will continue to call it Twitter. But that's neither here nor there. But there's this meme where it says either you do something or you don't do something. But either way, time is going to pass. And that's one way to look at the Wheel of Fortune is a measurement of time or an example and a manifestation of time. It's also looking at the idea of cycles and the patterns we look at, you know, and with it being reversed, it's an example of, or it signals that we're having difficulty, you know, accepting the patterns and accepting the cycles and accepting that when a season is over, it's over, right? We're in winter now. Try all we want might. I mean, even though it doesn't feel like it somewhat, because as of today, when I'm doing this reading, it's in the 60s. Not that I'm complaining too much, because I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and it can go down to below freezing. And below freezing brings two things: extreme cold and sickness. And there's already stuff running through here. That's neither here nor there. But, you know, it goes back to that point. You can't control what season you go into. You can only acknowledge it and adapt and work with it. You know, you can't make the food grow in the middle of winter. That's the time when things are cold and snow and everything is dormant. Spring is when things come out. You know, you have to wait for it. You can't make the fruit grow from the tree if it's not, when it's a seed still, you know, or when it's still growing out of the ground. It's still, if it's not ready to bear fruit, it's not ready to bear fruit. And that's something we have to accept, is we are all beholden to time. We can't rush time. We can't slow it down. We have to work with it. So the Wheel of Fortune being reversed signals that we're having issues with dealing with the time and the way time is passing. With the Sun card, right? There's two ways I like to look at the Sun card. I look at it as, on one hand, the sun brings light, which can bring clarity, because you see everything now. In the daylight, there's very little shadows. There's very little hiding from the light of the sun. It touches everything, or almost everything, to the point where you, like you said, you can perceive things as they are. The other thing about the Sun card is it can represent a sense of positivity. Now, sometimes that means positive feelings like happiness, you know, peace, warmth, all of that, because that's what the sun brings. But sometimes the positivity is you seeing what's there. Going back to my first interpretation of the Sun card, you can't, anything that's taking up the positive space. And it can force us, in combination with the Wheel of Fortune, it can force us to re-examine how we're viewing the way that time is passing, right? Like the reason why some people may be hesitant to accept that time is passing is because they might have some regrets, or they thought they were going to have more time, or, you know, they thought they were going to be able to do more. Things didn't go out the way that they had planned. And with the Sun card, the positive perception you can have is that it's okay if things didn't go as planned. We still have to move forward with what we've got. You know, we're gonna do the best we can with what we got. Oh, I love that Mariah Carey clip. But yeah, that is the point. We gonna do what we can. And I mean, speaking as someone who, you know, I think about my grandparents and their history, and as well as the collective history of most people in the diaspora. All of us, they had to do the best they could with what they had, given, you know, chattel slavery and whatnot, sharecropping, Jim Crow. even up to now. We have to do the best we can with what we have. And that takes some reorienting. But it's still a necessity to achieve the things that we need. And that's why I think it fits in well with the Three of Gourds, because there's a sense of us expanding ourselves, just not focusing just on our bodies, but the bodies of other people. And there's an element of positivity to that as well, right? Like, this is what we need to do. We need to think about how we're going to pour this water and redistribute this water to where everyone is nourished and everyone is replenished. And so that's something that, is the focus here. And no, we don't have the most amount of time. We got to work with the time that we have and do what we need to do. And so that means we might have to reprioritize some things, right? If you'll move different. It's natural for us to move different when we know that we have like 3 months left to do something versus 3 years to do something. When you know time is going down to the wire, there's some things you may hold off because you've reached a point where you realize that's not as important as something else that needs to get done. And so that's what we might be forced to do here, is really take stock of what is really important in our lives now and what do we need to do. And so that's with the tarot cards. So now let's look at some of the oracle cards to see what supportive messages we have. Let's see. What vibe, what exercise can we instill trust in? What exercise can go along with these messages that we have here? Oh, that shuffle was a little bit stacked. Let's try that shuffle again. Let's deal with the Oracle of Oddities. Let's move you over to the side a little bit, just a little bit, just a taste. Right. Let's see, and then let's go Earthbound. Let's see. Ooh, let me put you up here. All right. Get a new story. Okay. Ceremony. All right. And power. Okay. Let's start with get a new story, because something immediately came to mind for me here. With get a new story, right? It's sounding like, again, stories operate with time. There's always a time, there's a pacing with a story. I'm trying to put this into words for a second. Let me collect my thoughts. Okay. With this, with the exercise of getting a new story, it's forcing us to reflect on the way that we've used our time, the way that we've used our history, and the way that we've viewed our visions of the future, and the way that we've looked at our present, and revising it, reshaping it, reorienting it, to really reflecting on it, and like I said, revising, changing the vision of it. Because what we've been doing, the story that we've been playing in and been telling, it's not doing anything for us, anything beneficial, that is. So it's pretty upfront. Like, we need to change the narrative, change how we're moving and how we're using the time that we have, how we're connecting with the communities that we have and whatnot. And the reason why I'm bringing up community as well is because a story, yes, I can write a story, but stories are meant to be shared. Like, I can write a story and share it with myself, and absolutely that's valid, but I also can share it with other people. It is one of like the oldest forms of community is storytelling, like carrying with us memories, carrying with us a recollection of events, carrying with us, what has happened, or explaining why things are the way that they are. All of those things speak to how we connect and form the foundation for our communities. The story about how the United States became the nation that it is, that's a story. Some versions of that story, downplay or neglect to recognize certain aspects, like chattel slavery, like the displacement of the indigenous people that lived here, and whatnot, Trail of Tears and whatnot, all the people that were harmed due to the manifest destiny mentality. Those are stories, right? Just the same way the stories about Harriet Tubman, leading people up north to freedom, leading, black up north to freedom, fighting against people who want to enslave other people. Those are narratives. Even now, the narrative that's getting pushed about why the president of Venezuela was arrested by our current president, that's a story. And that's ringing the alarm bells. And again, it's leading us to know how we're using our time. So when we hear these stories, these stories are how different communities are forming. How are we forming? What stories are we telling? Maybe to counteract the stories that are also being told, right? Like, what stories are we telling to counteract the narrative that's being pushed to justify us arresting the president of another country, or to justify bombing another country, or to justify sending another country bombs to bomb another group of people. All those stories, what stories are we doing? How are we using our time and our energy, the limited amount of time and energy we have on this plane of existence, to counter those stories and form new communities and that are centered on something more towards liberation. And time is also very much there's a whole hourglass here. So that's another reason why time is coming up. The other aspect that's showing up, I'm gonna hold off on showing the power card. I'm gonna go to ceremony because it fits well. I hope you can see that. It fits well with the get a new story card, because ceremonies, rituals, those are all stories as well. Those are all performances, but they're stories as well. It's us as people. I mean, even storytelling is a ceremony and a ritual, but like literally a story is a ritual. The act of telling a story is a ritual, but it all comes down to, their practices, their ways of us performing something that serves the purpose of maybe it's meant to, quell fear, or maybe it's meant to spread fear. Maybe it's meant to inspire us. Maybe it's meant to discourage us. They could be lessons. Maybe it's meant to make us laugh, to give us a sense of lightness in life. Maybe it's meant to, make us connect with each other in sadness so that we can grieve and pour out whatever emotions we're dealing with. All of those things are ceremonies. And so, right along with getting a new story, we also need to look at the ceremonies that we're witnessing and who are these ceremonies serving. Because the other aspect of ceremony is a sense of divinity. I don't know how some of y'all grew up, but church is a ceremony. What goes on in the temple, all those things have an aspect of being ceremonial. And with them being ceremonial, they serve some type of spirit or divinity. So ask ourselves, what spirits are being fed by some of the ceremonies we're seeing? What stories are, what is the purpose of the stories that are being pushed towards us? And what is being neglected when we neglect other stories? All of that serves a purpose. And this leads me to the final card, power. Right. Hopefully you can see it. Let me see that. Yeah. Hopefully you can see that. But you see there's two hands reaching for what is a brain. Okay. Two hands. It looks like it's the bottom of the brain. And then the flowers there, they're purple flowers, and purple is often associated with spiritual work, and with the crown chakra, I think is the color that purple, excuse me, is used for. I don't know where brown came from, but these two hands reaching for the mind and really connecting, they're reaching for power. Again, all of these things, they make sense to that being the thing when it comes to community. All of us are reaching for a sense of autonomy, a sense of governance. And sometimes we need each other to do that, right? Like there's a sense of community that's needed to survive a lot of the times that we have, because the power to survive, survival requires power. Survival requires a degree of power. And sometimes the power we're going to draw on is the power that comes in numbers. So, yeah, that's just something to think about with that. Yeah, I don't know I really don't know how much further we can go with that. That's a potent one. Yeah. Thank you for these messages. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good, ooh. Ooh. Y'all don't mind me. Sometimes the reading be real hitting. It be real good. Real good. So this deck is the Akamara Tarot deck. This was the 4th deck that I had gotten when I was in my practice, and it is by Lolu S.A. Gay. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but I love their work. They've also made another deck called the Ashotele deck, which incorporates tarot as well as playing card divination all together. And so one of these days I might do a video with that, using that deck. But with the Akamara Tarot deck, it's very minimalist, but it's beautifully crafted as well. So let's see, what do we need to know? What messages does this deck have for us? What do we need to know? What do we need to meditate upon? What do we need to understand? What do we need to know? What do we need to know? What do we need to reflect upon? What do we need to revise? What do we need to meditate upon? What do we need to understand? What do we need to release? What do we need to integrate? What do we need to focus on? What do we need to recede? What do we need to know? Shuffle, one more shuffle. Okay. Ooh. So the underlying card is 6 of Wands, or the 6 of Canes in this deck. So I don't know if you can see that. Beautifully done. I love the crafting of it. The gold shows up. 6. And then we have, 5 of Swords reversed. Yeah, that's reversed. Okay. And then we have the 3 of Cowries, which is traditionally known as the 3 of Pentacles. Love it. It's beautiful. 3 of them. Okay, and that's the challenge. Huh. Okay, so starting with the 6 of Canes, or the 6 of Wands, it immediately makes me think that, well, the 6 of Wands, because 6 is the number of harmony, and wands, like I have said in other ones, are a symbol of ambition, of the things that inspire us, that fire us up, because it's associated with the element of fire. This is a moment where our desires are like in a harmonious space, celebratory, right? Because as you can see, there's this wreath, this laurel wreath here. We've won, right? And it's because connects this to like 6 coming after 5. While 5, like I said before, 5 is a number of conflict, or a sort of conflicting change, or a change that brings friction. 6 is that number of, okay, we went through the friction moment, and so now we've gotten to the moment where everything's working in alignment and in harmony. 6 of wands speaks to us reaching that harmony. It speaks to us, enjoying the fruits of whatever we're out on the other side of whatever struggle we were dealing with. And yeah, that's a moment of hope though. So if you picked the Akamara tarot path, this is what you're dealing with. You're dealing with, it's rough, but this is the joy that's supposed to come in the morning, is what it gives. Especially since, while this isn't the 5 of wands, it's the 5 of swords. And the fact that it's reversed signals that we're dealing with a mental conflict, right? Swords are associated with the mind and how the mind perceives the world. And sometimes we forget that just because it's in our mind, it doesn't automatically denote that, or it doesn't automatically mean that what we see in our mind also matches what's in reality. Sometimes the ideas that we have don't match reality, and that's why it can sometimes feel painful. Yeah, and so like with this being the heart of this reading, it centers on us examining how are we dealing with this conflict? What have we done to win this conflict? Where is it pushing us? Where is it taking us? Hold on a second. Ooh. Where is it pushing us? Where is it taking us? And whatnot. And it's not to say that we're going to continue to be in conflict, because I do firmly believe that we're going to reach our moment of celebration, but sometimes will we be able to recognize when it's our moment of celebration? Because like I said, the swords deal with our sense of perception. Do we know when we've won? Do we know when the battle is over? I'm thinking of like people who went through like a major traumatic experience. It's difficult for them to tell when it's over, and sometimes they get brought back to those oh, excuse me, it was the juice I made. It's difficult for them to realize that the experience is over, because it's still in their body and it's still in their minds, and they still hold on to it. Maybe it's because they hold on to the idea that they shouldn't have experienced that, which is often true. A lot of people should not have to go through some traumatic experiences. But the reality is sometimes they do. So that's why it's so important to realize when you've gone through something, even though you probably shouldn't have gone through that experience, you got to accept when you did. And so that's where I think the 3 of cowries also comes into play, because like this cowries or pentacles are connected with the earth, and the earth is associated with reality, the physical reality that we exist in. And with 3, it's a number of expansion and change for the better, and growth and development. And so the fight is over. So what I'm getting is this, right? At the heart of it is us dealing with a fight that maybe we even lost, or maybe we feel like we've lost, but we're being reminded the challenge is realizing when we've won. That's what this all gives. This all gives is that, like, yes, you had a setback, but it's okay, because when you take stock of everything, you'll realize you're still winning. You're still winning. You know, like you didn't, it's not over. You haven't hit rock bottom, or even if you did hit rock bottom, you're still good and in a position to still succeed, to still get this if you can recognize it. And it's about you getting out of your own mind and just remembering the reality that you occupy. Yeah. Love that for y'all in 2026. It ain't over. It's a new year. Yeah, you know, I'm sure plenty of people took some hits and took some, what Cardi B say, knock down 10 times, no, knock down 9 times, but get up 10. That's the answer you should have. But let's see what the vibes say as well. All right, let's go with Oracle of Oddities. In case anyone is wondering, and if you've watched the other ones, I like to pull all of them first and then reveal them. I know some people might reveal the card after they finish pulling it, and I might do that as well, but I just don't want to do that right now. I want to make it a surprise. But yes. One more shuffle. Oh. All right. It's not personal. Okay. Oh, we got power again. How about that? Labor. All right. Yeah, let's do with it's not personal. So this is it's not personal. Ooh, ring light, get out the way. You see that. Ring lights keep showing. But it's not personal. That fits perfectly with the Five of Swords reversed. Again, it's about our mental perception and how we're perceiving a situation. And sometimes we might think we've gotten knocked back and that it's a personal attack. Or I want to rephrase it in a way that doesn't sound cliche, but sometimes it may seem like we've done something wrong. You haven't. It's just the way that the cards, it's just the way that the cards have been dealt. No pun intended, but it is what it is. Like, yes, maybe really, that's really it. Don't become so attached to this outcome. And it was something else that I also read where it was talking about how when you make decisions, it's not the best idea to think that if a situation or if when you make a decision, it ends up coming to a bad outcome, that somehow you mean you made a bad decision. That's not always the case. Sometimes even good decisions still have outcomes that can be considered bad. And this is important because it's just a matter of your perspective on it. And this is why it's also important to ground it in the reality of it. What are the facts? What are the physical impacts of things? Yes, maybe you're in conflict with a friend. Maybe you were in conflict with a job. Maybe you were all of this. That just because you got, or example, speaking of jobs, maybe you got fired from a job. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad worker. That doesn't necessarily mean that you did anything wrong. There are plenty of people who are getting laid off just because a company is cutting costs and they just don't value you. That doesn't mean that you should take the way them devaluing you does not mean you should devalue you. No, that's their perception. That's theirs. That's not personally yours. You don't need to take that on. So the same way this figure right here is letting that go because that's their business, let that go, and let that go the sense of trying to defend yourself and prove yourself to someone else or to some other entity that doesn't quite see you and see the ways that you are gifted and you are capable of the way that you are capable of just bringing whatever it is that you bring. Sometimes you just don't fit into a place. And that doesn't mean that you're a bad person. That doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong. It just means you don't fit there. So it's okay to just let that go and detach from that. And really, like I said, go back to the physical, impactful, material things that you have. What material skills do you have? What material achievements have you had? Because they're there. The achievements are there. What I'm getting is that the achievements are there. You just might be overlooking them. So don't become so attached to the negativity that you forget all the positives as well. Right? And so that's what makes me think. This is what leads me to see with the labor card, right? You see this bee, you see the flowers, you see all the honey. Bees are busy. We have busy as a bee for a reason. They're working. And what are they working? They create a community. They work for the benefit of the hive. They also work to create honey that they eat. And they're so abundant in the honey that they're able to overflow. And people are able to enjoy honey, because there is a such thing as they can make too much honey. And that's why, bee farms, you can harvest honey and it doesn't harm the beehive community. It's necessary. It helps the beehive community to take the excess amount of honey that they have. And so that's what's so beautiful about this is you've worked hard. You've put in so much work. Again, this kind of also connects with, again, the Five of Swords reversed. Because maybe this is some dealing with work. Maybe this is, whoever it is dealing with whatever is going on in their career. And you feel like the job you've been working or the work that you've put in to something, your job, your relationship, something, you've put a lot of time and energy and maybe money into it. And you've given so much space to it. And it doesn't seem like it's giving you what you want. But that's why you should adjust your perspective to see you might be overflowing with things, or you have what you need. You might not get what you want, but you've got what you need to still thrive and do something more. You know, maybe 3 shells doesn't seem like a lot, but that could be just enough for you to do whatever it is you need to do and go further and grow further. Like, think about that. And there's a power to that. There's a power to still having your needs met and having whatever it is you need to still continue. And in here with this, I'm thinking of like autonomy, like agency. I'm thinking ability to do something. You're not restricted as you think you are, and again, the mind being the center figure here, right? Like, this is the piece parts of the brain. Really think about what your mind has been put towards when it comes to being powerful. Just think about that. Think about that. You're not powerless. You're not defeated. That's the main thing I keep hearing here, is that you're not defeated. Not the way you might think you're defeated, but you're not. You're only as defeated as you think you are. But when you actually tally things up, you're not defeated. You're still good. You can still do what you got to do. You just might be thinking small. You need to think big. And that's your goal for 2026. How much bigger can you think? Don't think about all the ways that something can fail. Or if you are going to think about all the ways that something can fail, Diana Ross. I remember when Diana Ross had she was on a talk show. She had an interview. This was back in the day. But Diana Ross, she had said if she thinks of something negative, she also has to think of something positive. Take that into account. Practice that. Now, I might be paraphrasing. That might not be exactly what she said, but that's what I took from it. It still works. Think whatever negative thing you thought was going to happen, also think of how something positive can happen. If you think something can fail, stop and think about how something can work. And what happens, but it helps with balancing your perception and balancing, your sense of reality. Everything is not always bad in reality. I mean, yes, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of stuff going on that's just like, whoa. But there's also some good going on, right? I brought this up previously in the video. Yes, if you live in the United States, yes, our government is doing some stuff that it has no business doing. But there are people responding to it. And there are people connecting in response and in resistance to that. Yes, there was instances of ICE snatching people up, but there's instances of people pushing back against ICE. There's people protesting ICE. There's people, not allowing this to go. Yes, there's some people who are supporting it, but there are people who are against it and actively working against it. So don't just think about the way things are wrong. Think about what's also going right, and encourage and feed what's also going right, and continue to support what's also going right in whatever ways you can, Yeah. Oh, that's a hot one. I like this. Yes. Oh. Yes. You've got the power. Oh. But yes. Thank you for those messages. I like that. Whew.